So welcome to the second part of the session, which is about balance. Now, what's really important is that I have done another balance video that is uploaded, and that was done at the end of last week. And that is kind of basic balance skills. So if you have an injury, if there is something more going on, as always, please seek medical advice at someone that's a professional that you know. If you know that you would class yourself as having poor balance, this is kind of definitely much more an advanced stage. So don't just jump straight into this. It is quite interesting. People, as soon as I start balance sessions, it's a bit of a game, so people can get quite addicted. It's quite self-competitive. So with anything that we're doing here, it isn't something that you're necessarily doing every day, maybe just a few times a week. What we're talking about with balance is this aspect of control, and control means the stability and strength kind of actually affects our core and our hips, our knees, our ankles, and maybe any other part of muscles in your legs. As you know, if you've joined in any of our sessions where we're talking about rehab, we're really looking at symmetry. We're looking at single leg strength, because running is one of those sports we're doing lots of stuff on single legs. And the simplest thing to think about is we want the legs to be as similar as possible. Now, some of the tests that I'm going to mention are what we call gold standard tests. So, you know, professional athletes, physios will use versions of this to screen if someone can go back to their sport. And their kind of stats to do with, are they 4 centimetres apart? Are they within 10% of each other? As someone at home, you're really looking to do this as kind of symmetrical as possible. The reason it's important is, one, some people are struggling with one leg versus the other. The other thing is, some of you may have had an injury in the past and never quite got your balance back. When we look at balance, sometimes my clients will talk about this feeling of heaviness, this lack of responsiveness in one side compared to another, and that can just be that sense of lack of stability. So why is stability important? Well, one, we want to prevent you spraining your ankle, spraining your knee, twisting your back, because one leg isn't that stable compared to the other. The other thing is, if we talked about this when we talked about kind of our hip abductors, if we're corkscrewing all over the place on one leg, if our knee is really drifting in a huge amount on one side compared to the other, that can lead to problems and other injuries in other areas. So the simplest way to start off with balance is, can you stand on one leg? Now, the reality of me demoing this is demoing balance live with no second takes probably means that I'm probably going to fall over at some point. So I can do this. The other thing that would be useful for you if you want to have a look, you know, I'm not a physio, but I'm also a person with my own injuries and bits and pieces. So my left leg is definitely weaker than my right leg. And maybe you'll pick that up as you watch me kind of demo some stuff. So no pressure. So the first thing is really, really simple. Can you stand on one leg? Really simple. Can you stand on one leg? How long can you stand for? And if you're running, this should be really, really easy, to the extent that you can kind of move your arms. And all I'm doing by this is actually distracting my brain. So can I do stuff to distract my brain and allow myself to stay stable? When you can do this all in trainers, the actual tests are done barefoot, just because that increases the challenge. Sometimes as a physio, we will make a decision that someone does need to do it in trainers if we've specifically thought that they need something called orthotics, which is a little bit more of a health professional review of that patient. So standing on one leg, you can do that. Pass that test, aiming for at least 30 seconds, definitely trying to get up to 60 seconds. The next thing that you have is, you can see this kind of star on the floor. Now, they will talk about a star which is 6 to kind of 8 feet long with each stripe. In reality, you won't see me be able to do that here. And sometimes we're looking at really high level athletes with a huge amount of flexibility to have it that long. You can also do this quite visually. The other thing that you want to get hold of, and I'm just going to grab something from my drawer, is like for one of the tests, like a pen or a little ball. It's quite useful. I'm going to just use two. The joy of being in a physio room, I've got all of this kit to hand. So one of the tests that we're going to talk about is something called the runner's touch. So the runner's touch is when you're standing on one leg and you're trying to reach forwards as far as you can and touch down with one hand. So hopefully you can see this. What's quite nice is just to mark it. So if you're at home, something where your finger is, or you can drop a pen down. I don't know why I've picked a ball because this is probably going to roll. So just have a watch. Again, I can do this normally without pressure. So I'm standing on one leg. I'm going to reach forward as far as I can and come back up. Now, some degree of wobbling is absolutely fine, because the whole point of that is that we do wobble and we can correct ourselves. So if I go to my left side, highly embarrassing now if I fall over. So you can see, I don't know if you can see that on the screen, but there is about that much difference between my left and my right, which is absolutely fine, but I know my left is weaker. Hold on, let me just show you where I pop them. There you go. So let's just come back up again. So something nice and simple. So from here, so I think I'm going to have to adjust it again because otherwise my head's going to get cut off. Glamours of not having a camera assistant. The next thing that we're going to do is I'm going to pick these up. So that's called the runner's touch. So really simply, standing on one leg, trying to reach forwards as far as you can go, touch the floor and come back up. And I can't do that and talk to everyone at the same time and try and look at you. The next test we're going to look at is the Y test. So this is called the STAR test. And really, really important that you don't have a knee injury as you try and do this. So you can see these lines. This is very small. Normally I do this with my bed turned round and it's set up over here. So standing on one leg, you're trying to reach as far as you can along the planes. So that's forwards and back. In terms of your foot, you can literally touch the toes down, but you shouldn't put the foot down. That's a failed test. Then we go side to side. So just there. So for me, actually, it's easier to hover my legs. And then we've got the diagonals. So again. So you can see I'm just picking the points and we're going across. Or I'll change legs now, just give that one a bit of a rest. This is my weaker side. You can go all the way round. And you can see that I'm reaching further. The tests. And normally you would do this without doing a live session at the same time. Really important to really see. You can see how much I'm moving. I've got a problem with my ankle on my left side and a bit of a weakness in the hip, but I'm actually quite happy with that. There is a modified version of that called the Y test. Very obvious. You're effectively just using a Y. So if you think about these markers, and again, you can imagine that at home. You stand in the centre, and then what you would look at doing is imagine you're tracing that Y and then crossing over, and it's all this kind of crossing over that's really important, and then going backwards. So those are three. So that's the runner's touch, leaning forward, touching the floor, the STAR test, the Y test. They're kind of quite official tests. What I quite like to do with my runners or anyone who's had an injury is also call out. So when they can do that, I start to be like, okay, tap forward, tap backwards. Because when we're running, there are aspects which aren't predictable, or for any injury or when we're recovering, there's stuff that isn't predictable. So this is all planned. which is great, but having that little bit of unpredictability, that's a good word, really also pushes you to the next stage. So other simple things that you can do, slightly less official, is actually to challenge the surface that you're standing on. Because as you know, if you've been out and about, it's unlikely that the floor or pavement that you're running on is even, and it's the ability to recover from those uneven forces, which is the thing that we want to practice. As always, I suggest doing it first of all with trainers on, and then afterwards kind of taking your trainers off, having a go and looking for that difference. So simple things that you can do is, if you can stand on one leg, get a couple of cushions, pop them on the floor. Can you stand on them? Just see how that is. You'll notice that it's a little bit harder. The other bit of kit that I love, I think lots of physios have favourite bits of kit. I love this, and I think Gemma's going to type in, this is called a Wobble mat or an air stability cushion. They've all come up with different brand names. They're not expensive. A lot of you may have seen kind of wooden boards called Wobble boards, which you can have at home. I tend to think that people master them quite quickly. A Wobble board is a piece of wood and it's got a central kind of ball on the bottom with a flat bit. And actually, as soon as you figured it out, you can find the balance point really quickly. This is like the home version of what you would find in a gym, and in the gym they have things called bow suits. And bow suits, imagine a visual, but most of us aren't going to have the space or even spend the money on a bow suit. What happens is this is filled with air, which means there isn't a fixed point. So you're always having to work. Now I'm assuming that from what I said at the start that you all have got decent balance. But saying that, please, when you use this, be near something. There's nothing worse than picking up a piece of kit and then falling off. So, wobble mat, 2 legs. I can get onto it now without having to hold on, but for you, you need to do that. And as you can see, I have my thoughts about, you know, sometimes kind of bigger feet, actually it's a bit easier. If you're quite light, then you don't roll it as much, but you're trying to stand. Most people find this quite unnerving, but give it a go a few times and then your body will learn the sensation and you'll be able to get on it. And then again, from there, just kind of wave your arms about, distracting the brain. After that, you can go onto one leg. Now, really, really pretty hard to do this one leg. It would be, if you're just practicing your stability on one leg, you just want to hold on and stand, and that may be enough, just standing on one leg and holding on. You may want to do what I call tickling the surface, which is this kind of halfway point between gripping and then releasing. Because if you imagine that you're tickling, if you just grab your hand and just kind of tickle your hand, you'll feel that you're kind of having these moments where you're in contact and you're released. So you stand on one leg and then you kind of do this tickling thing. So you're not going to fall off and you're going to feel safe. From there, you can go into letting go. And you really need to use your arms and think about it like a tightrope. And then you can kind of step off. Count in your head how long you can do it. If it's something that you've just got, maybe have a few practices before you really try and figure out if there's a left to right difference. So again, I love this bit of kit. It's something that you give to people struggling with balance, but they are only ever going to do it on both legs, and they're always going to be holding on. To people who are doing quite high level rehab, where their goal is to be able to kind of do this in the middle of the room, why am I doing this? Okay, and really try and balance. So that's me, and actually just as an example, probably won't be as good, I want you to see it on my weaker leg. So you'll see probably, oh, not having a bad day, but it's much harder for me. And I really did have quite a significant thing going on here, and it is possible to build up and up and up. From here, we can do things quite functional. So as part of training, we can talk about agility drills. So I may get someone to do a circuit, and then at some point as part of their circuit, just come into a balance pose and then step off, or to kind of do something quite dynamic and then come and stand. So again, we're looking at all these varieties, these variabilities, these factors. So this is really key for kind of standing sports. Specifically, my talk about today. Some of you I know who are tuning in are cyclists as well, but this could be something that's more relevant to you day to day. And there are points where if you're standing up on your pedals and you're out of the seat, just having that ability to be stable through one side also connects through your core. If someone can balance on one leg, if someone's got strength, then we do look at things like hopping drills. And again, we're looking at 10% difference. And there's certain things that you can do from, I don't have enough space right now, how I'm set up, from hopping up and down on one leg. What is your control? What is your landing? The ability to do 3 hops forwards in a row. Can you then hop backwards? Can you hop as if you're crossing over, side to side hopping? And again, we're looking at landing, we're looking at control, really trying to reduce any risk of injury. So that's quite a simple session today. It doesn't take too long. The key part, we've talked about foam rollers, we've talked about stretching, we've talked about strengthening, and we've got balance. And next week, we're going to focus, I'm going to change it up from which we talked about relaxation. I'm actually going to put a session on core into the whole mix, because that's really important as well. So I hope you're finding these really informative and really useful. As I said, if you're having any injuries, just go and find a health professional that you're comfortable with, that they can have a look and see if there's anything more that is going on.